Welcome in the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com, the only all-free South Florida sports website where you can find not only our columns and our articles and our podcasts and our YouTube channel, but you can also get all of our merchandise, including a bunch of Heat stuff. And yes, the shirts are going out. You'll get them quicker than you would if you ordered them from the NBA store, the NFL store, anywhere else. We've got our Tua stuff, but also our Bam stuff, our Jimmy stuff, our Hero stuff. It is all there. Also, check out all the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We really appreciate the sponsors, all South Florida, for coming through for us during the pandemic. We want you to come through for them. These are all terrific sponsors, and they're based here in South Florida. And one of them is the law firm of Gonzalez and Tybor. You can find them at bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. That's bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. They represent clients in South Florida, but also in Orlando, Tampa, and Fort Myers. And here's the thing. Bankruptcy is one of the few laws that exists to actually help consumers. I know it can be a dirty word at times. It's not. And the new stimulus package that went out, they made some important changes to the bankruptcy laws. So it's important to have a lawyer explain the changes. They've got payment plans at Gonzalez and Tybor, little to no upfront fees, and they can do the consultations through telephone or video conference. Again, the website is bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. The phone number is 954, local, Broward, 678-8354. That's 954-678-8354. 8354. They can help you or anyone you know. If you're lucky enough to make it through COVID with no financial problems, chances are you know someone who is not that lucky. Gonzalez and Tybor can help. Even before the pandemic, a lot of people were carrying a lot of debt, living paycheck to paycheck. Bankruptcy can give them a chance to start fresh. It does not ruin credit. Most people see an increase of 100 to 150 points on their credit score within a year of filing. So again, the website is bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. Gonzalez and Tybor, 954-678-8354. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back. I've got Alex Toledo. We're recording this on a rainy Memorial Day, so Alex and I decided to get together and pod. But there is actual NBA news, Alex, and we've been, I would say, as on top of this as anybody, because we've had people on the podcast who've talked about it. So check out recent episodes about the Orlando plan. We got into that a couple of episodes ago and sort of where this thing is going. And it looks like, look, NBA teams are starting to gather again. They've been working out. It looks like players may be coming back in the next week to two that are not back already. And it looks like there may be a season. I mean, I'm looking at television right now, and I guess the Ozarks, everybody's decided to party on top of each other. So I guess why not bring the NBA back? But, Alex, let's go through some of the plans that are out there and then kind of the development where it's crystallizing a little bit on who the Heat would play in the first round of the playoffs if this thing's happened. So let me throw the scenarios at you. Tell me what you like. One scenario has been thrown out there was this 24-team scenario with some teams getting buys, but essentially that keeps some of the teams that were out of the playoff picture in the mix to possibly challenge for a playoff spot. Now, in the East and the West, the difference between 8 and 9 was at least 3.5 games, but you still could have a Washington try to sneak in. You still could have a New Orleans, which was gaining momentum with Zion, try to sneak in. What do you think of the 24-team idea?
Wait, wouldn't it be 16?
No, the first one that they've talked about would be 20. Well, we're going to talk about 16.
Talking about playoff plus.
We're talking about playoff plus first, yes.
Okay, well, I think that's I'm not really in on it. I prefer the whole playoff plus thing where you just kind of do the single game tournament for the teams that are in the race, and then you go to the playoffs. That would be my preference. What do you think about the 24-team thing? What are the pros for that?
Well, I think the pros obviously are that you ended the season early, and so it becomes somewhat unfair to the teams that got knocked out. Although I would say that playing 64 to 67 games is a representative enough sample size. I mean, it's not like you played 40. I've said that consistently on the pod. I mean, even during the lockout season a few years ago, they played 66. Okay, and some people put an asterisk next to that season. I didn't, because I covered that season. I traveled with the Heat that year. I know how hard it was to play 3 games in 3 nights. Remember when the Heat swept 3 in 3 nights? I think it was Indiana, Cleveland. I can't remember the other city. I never put an asterisk behind that season because everybody had the same rules. If everybody has the same rules, then it's fine, okay? But the way that you're looking at it right now is that, there were some teams that were on the fringe that, like I said, were building momentum, okay? Now, I don't care about the East because there was really, honestly, there were only 6 teams in the East that even deserved to make the playoffs, okay? Even though the conferences are more balanced than they were before, there were only 6 that even deserved it. In the West, the 8th seed was not as highly ranked as in previous years. Memphis was a big surprise. They were over 500. But typically in the West, if you've looked in recent seasons, almost the last 20 seasons, there would be several teams over 500 that were out of the playoff picture. That was not the case this year, okay? You had some that just missed, okay, and I'm going to look at the standings now. You had some that just missed, but you didn't have, and again, New Orleans is the one that everybody talks about because everybody wanted to see more of Zion, and they were starting to win a lot more once
Portland
they got
there too, and they were in the conference finals last year. Dame and CJ would be vocal about wanting to get a chance to be back in the playoffs after being there pretty much every year.
Absolutely. So you look at the teams that are out. Okay, so the Grizzlies were actually, I shouldn't say the Grizzlies were over 500. They slipped under 500. They lost their last game of the year. so they were 32 and 33. But then you had the Blazers 29 and 37. Pelicans 28 and 36, Kings 28 and 36, Spurs 27 and 36, Suns 26 and 39, and then the Wolves and the Warriors. Although nobody would want to play the Warriors right now if Clay and Steph were actually coming back. But if you look at you say that McCollum and Lillard would be vocal, and I would say yes, okay, they would be, and then I'd say you're 8 games under 500. I mean, through 66. Again, it's not like they played 40. I mean, that team had time. They also, not that this should matter, they had some injuries, yes.
Yeah, they definitely did.
They had some injuries, but Dame was healthy, okay? And Whiteside was healthy for what that's worth. McCollum was healthy. He just wasn't good early in the year. So I don't, and are the Kings really a playoff team? No. I mean, the Pelicans are the one that, you say if they'd had Zion the whole year, they would have looked different, but that happens.
Who was getting pretty hot towards the end before they shut down the season?
San Antonio. Yes, yeah. I know. And but again, the Spurs, I mean, you're talking about a franchise that didn't win fewer than 50 games for 20 years. And the best they were going to do this year, if they swept the rest of their games, won their last 19, was 46 wins. So I mean, they were headed. I mean, they were headed basically for a 36 to 38 win season. So I mean, I don't know what the argument could be. I mean, if you're going to take the 24. I mean, let's flip it to the East. I mean, let's just say if you're there are teams in the East that wouldn't want to make the playoffs, okay? All right. I mean, who would make
we're not going in.
Well, who would make the playoffs in the East if you just did it 12 East, 12 West? The Knicks.
Oh my
okay? Because right now, the Magic were in the Nets were under 500 at 7. The Magic were 5 games under 500 and 8. The Wizards are 16 games under 500. They were 5.5 games behind the Magic, okay? 16 games under 500, 24 and 40. Do they deserve to make the playoffs? Hornets, 23 and 42. Bulls, they wouldn't even want to play for their coach another minute, 22 and 43. Knicks, 21 and 45. They actually snuck ahead of the Pistons at the end by a game, and then the Hawks and the Cavs. I mean, those teams are tanking.
Yeah, never mind. I'm firmly against the 2014.
Right. Do you want to see these teams? I mean, even if you skew it and just do 24 best records, okay? Let's say you do 24 best records. Then you would get all the way up to the Suns in 13 in the West would make it, and it would be the top 11 in the East. The Bulls would still make the playoffs. They would the Knicks would be edged out by the Suns. That would be the only difference. The Bulls would still make the playoffs. I don't want to talk about 24 anymore. Forget it. I don't want to see those teams. No interest. Okay, and I don't want these other teams to come back. So let's get to 16 and let's get to the 2 scenarios because this affects the Heat. The one scenario is just to do it as you always done it, which I've never liked this, but like I said, the disparity between the East and West was not that great this year in compared to past years. So just do 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7 in the East and in the West. The Heat play the Pacers. I mean, that's where we were, 41 and 24. Even if they'd beaten Charlotte the last game of the year, they wouldn't have caught the Celtics. I mean, they might have if the season extended because the Celtics had a difficult schedule, but they were 2.5 games back. They were 2 ahead of the Pacers. The Pacers are tied with the Sixers. The Pacers have the tiebreak. So the only complaint there could be the Sixers could say, well, we lost to the Pacers on a tiebreak. Well, you lost on a tiebreak. I mean, it is what it is. And it doesn't really affect you as far as home court. There is no home court. So, and they 5-6 wouldn't
all year about the Heat needing to get home court,
and there's no home court except they're playing in Orlando where they never win.
All season about which Eastern Conference opponent we would prefer more. All of it just out the window.
But now it becomes, do you want Eastern Conference or do you want the other one? Because if you're going to keep this system, then the Heat just play the Pacers in the first round like expected. Then they would get the Bucks or the Magic in the second round, likely obviously Milwaukee. And they would be out of the Toronto, Boston, Philadelphia Nets bracket. Okay, that's if you keep it. Now, here's the other proposal that's come up. For years, I've wanted the NBA to just go 1 through 16 because there were 20 years in between the time where the 8th seed in the East had a better record than the 8th seed in the West. It happened 2 years ago. Before that, the last time it happened was 1999, and that was the Knicks in the strike sorting season, finished 8th, beat the Heat, went to the finals, okay? But they were 6 games behind the Heat, between 1 and 8, okay, in the conference, okay? You couldn't even look at that season. Every season since, the West was better. Every season. This season, they're a little better, but not that much better. And actually, at the top of the conference, you could argue the East is just as good as the West, okay? Mm-hmm. But now they're talking about going 1 through 16. Why? Because, part of it is because you do travel typically. And if this is all going to be in Orlando, you don't have to worry about travel. So you can play teams from the other conferences against each other without worrying about long flights. There are no flights. So you could do that. So here's how this would break down, and this is how the rest of the pod is going to go, okay, if this ends up happening, is that the Heat would be the 8th seed overall. Now, they would be the 8th seed because they lost to Charlotte the last day of the season. Because if they had beaten Charlotte, they would be 42-23, and the Jazz are 41-23. So they would have finished ahead of the Jazz, okay, which would have made them the 7th seed behind the Bucks first, Lakers second, Raptors third, Clippers fourth, the Nuggets 5th? No, the Celtics 5th, Nuggets 6th. Okay, they would have been 7th. But because and so who would they have played? The Rockets.
In the first round.
The Rockets are 10th. Okay? That would have been a 7-10 matchup. But here's the thing. The Heat would have been, if you keep the brackets the same, that's something else we're going to talk about, I think, at the end of this pod. If you keep the brackets the same, they would have been in the same bracket as the Lakers. So they would have gotten the Lakers, if they beat Houston, gotten the Lakers in the second round. Because they're the 8, they would play the Thunder in the first round. 9th seed. They actually have they finished a half game ahead of the Thunder, 41-24 versus 40-24. This is a Thunder team, by the way. They won their last 3 going in the break. That was given a 1% chance to make the playoffs. So they would play the Thunder, and then the second round would be Bucks or Magic. Now, we are going to get to the matchup, but let's talk about this now. One thing that Ira Winderman put out today, and I agree with him, but he didn't put it out for the same reason I would, is he threw out the scenario of not having brackets at all. And if Ira put this out there, probably somebody's telling him this is a possibility. Okay? Just from past experience, okay, with Ira. Somebody may be telling him that they're considering this. And maybe he even said that. I don't know. But what he basically said was, one of the reasons, the NCAA tournament does not reseed, right? 1 seed plays a 16 seed. If the 16 seed wins, which almost never happens, but if the 16 seed wins, they just play the winner 8-9 next. You don't reseed. You just stay in your bracket, okay? The NHL reseeds. So in hockey, they reseed. So that means if the worst team wins their first round series, the 16th seed or whatever, the 8th seed in a conference wins their first round series, they remain the worst team for seeding going forward. So they would play whoever is the highest seed left. Okay? And the reason for doing it is to reward the teams that finished higher in the standings, especially because hockey is so variable, right? Crazy things happen. So they want to at least give a reward to playing 82 games and getting to the higher in the standings. So they allow whoever's the highest seed left to continue to play the lowest seeds left. Okay. Now, Ira threw this out there as a possibility because he said without the travel, you don't have the concerns about getting scouts to various places where you have to know who you possibly would play in the next round. So it gives you a little bit more wiggle room, Alex, to kind of, it doesn't matter as much, right? Because of that. Here's the reason I think they might do it. Because you have to reward teams for what they just did in the regular season. And you're not giving them home court. There's no home court. Nobody likes my idea of giving someone a 1-0 lead in the series. Okay?
Definitely not like that.
Right. So they're not going to – nobody likes it. Not just you. So they're not going to do that. So what's the option? Well, just keep reseeding, right?
Because so why is reseeding beneficial for the teams who would normally get home court advantage?
Because if you're the Bucks, let's say this, okay? Let's say you're the Bucks, and there may be a spring of upsets here in the first round, right? Because we don't know what kind of shape guys are going to come into. We don't know how motivated they're going to be, how quickly they're going to.
All types of factors.
All types of factors, right? So if you're Milwaukee, all right. If teams end up having a bunch of ups, you worked all year to get the number 1 overall seed, not just in the East, but in the entire league. If there's a bunch of upsets, shouldn't you benefit by playing whoever is the worst seeded team left? You don't get home court, but at the very least, if there's a bunch of upsets, and let's say we have, I mean, there's not a lot of bad teams in the West, but let's say the Grizzlies beat the Lakers in the first round. I don't know if they're the 15. No, I don't think they're the 15. The 15 would be the Nets, right? Okay, they're not going to happen. But let's say Durant and Kyrie come back. Okay, but or let's just say that LeBron comes back and pulls a hamstring in the first game. Okay, and let's say Dinwiddie goes off and the Nets beat the Lakers. Shouldn't the Bucks get the benefit of playing the Nets next instead of having to play the Heat next, or the Thunder next? Right?
Yeah, I do get what you're saying. So, it gives them, I don't know what other you might be right because I don't know what other way there would be to reward these teams for doing so well in the regular season. So I think you may have a point.
I think it's the only way. And I think, especially the higher seeded teams, because there's a cluster of teams here in the middle, right? I mean, if you look at it, after you get past the Bucks and the Lakers, who had 53 and 49 wins, the Raptors, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Heat, Celtics, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, all 140 to 46. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you got like 7 teams there who won 40 to 46. And so, but then you have teams that are clearly worse. The Grizzlies 132, the Nets 130, the Magic 130. Okay, the Pacers and Sixers 139. So they were basically in the middle too. So to me, the only fair way to do this is to make sure that if any of those teams spring an upset, okay, Nets, Magic, Nets, Magic, Grizzlies, that at least the teams that are left at the top, the Lakers, Bucks, Raptors, Clippers, get the opportunity to play them. That's the only way to do it. I mean, and it's not that great a disparity because, like I said, there were so many teams bunched up between like 39 and 46 wins. But I just think that is the only way to do it where you're giving any advantage at all, to the better teams. So that's how I would look at it. So let's get to the next part of this because what I want to touch on now is if it's the Thunder, which is, I mean, we never said all year they're going to play the Thunder in the playoffs. What exactly does that look like? Because I think that will be really interesting to check out. But first, I want you to check out one of our great sponsors here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's the Lessons Via Leaders podcast. We had Will Weinrob on our show, and we talked about Phil Jackson and Pat Riley, and it was great stuff. So you got to check out his podcast. It is still going here, obviously, during the shutdown. Lessons Via Leaders is a weekly podcast show where they interview a new entrepreneur, founder, or thought leader each week. Many of the guests are local leaders here in South Florida that have built huge businesses and fostered large communities and movements. Each show features a new guest that shares with the audience valuable lessons and learnings that they've amassed over the course of their careers. The show can be found all the places you find this show, which is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else you listen to your podcast. They also have a video version of each episode that they post on YouTube. So check it out. It's the Lessons Via Leaders podcast. And And definitely check out the episode that we did with Will, Alf and I did about a week and a half ago, because it really gives you some insight into his perspective, and I think you'll enjoy his show. All right, let's get back to it here. Thunder Heat. Like I said, Thunder were given about a 1% chance to make the playoffs. They dumped Paul George before the season. Sam Presti hoarded assets. He's got as many assets as any team in the league now. He's like the Danny Ainge of the West now, except he'll actually do the right things with them. But they got a core piece in the trade, who's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, in his second year led the Thunder in scoring at 19.3 with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a block, while shooting 47% from the field, 35% from 3, and 80% from the line. I mean, he was terrific. They obviously, Chris Paul, had a bounce back season. I thought he was close to done in Houston. And he averaged, the numbers pretty staggering when I was looking at him, Alex. He shot his splits, he shot 49%, 36% from 3, 90% from the line, averaged 18 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, a steal and a half, and only 2 turnovers.
Yep. That's Chris Paul.
But that's real Chris Paul. Like that is, and he did it in 32 minutes a game. And then the third part of sort of their guard rotation is the guy who maybe the 6th man of the year, actually, which is Dennis Schroeder, averaged 19 points a game on 47% shooting and 84% from the line, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and just he tears up the Heat all the time. Always. And he's only 26. Like, people think he's older. Only 1 start. So that's the 3-guard rotation. Steven Adams is the big guy who actually they were kind of looking to move, but he's still effective. 11 points, 9.5 rebounds in just 27 minutes a game. Noel is kind of his primary backup, the former Sixer lottery pick. And then Gallinari, who was almost with the Heat, but he didn't want to he didn't want to roll into free agency a year from now. So instead he's going to roll in after this season. He wanted a 3-year deal from the Heat, but Gallinari was shooting 41% from 3 and averaging 19 points a game while shooting 87% from the line. This team is, except for Adams, is extremely good from the line. Like I said, they roll the 3 guards. They're not particularly deep because I think that's going to be filled in the draft. But as you found, they're really good defensively, right?
Mm-hmm. They are 9th in the league in defensive rating, which is a little bit surprising to me. I knew they were good, but didn't know they were quite top 10, and they're just about middle of the pack on offense. So they're a pretty good team.
They're a pretty good team that I think would give the Heat problems for a number of reasons. All right, so let's look at how they would start. They were pretty much starting, I think Terrence Ferguson, who's, again, another young guy, only 21 years old, was kind of their 5th starter. I can't pronounce Dort's first name, but he's 20. This team is young. Like, beyond Gallinari and Chris Paul, and Steven Adams is still only 26. Beyond Gallinari and Chris Paul, the rest of the team, everybody in the rotation is under 20, 26 or under.
That's crazy. It just processed in my head that Steven Adams is only 26. That's just crazy.
It's nuts, right? But he's been a productive guy for a long time. So
Kelly Olynyk, because I know they came in the same draft.
I think about the same. I think he's 26, 27. Kelly might be a year older than him. Yeah. Okay. And so they're not particularly deep. Muscala gets minutes off the bench. He's okay. Hamidou Diallo, only 21, is also averaging about 18 minutes a game. But like I said, they're going to end up flipping some of their draft picks for someone. Maybe it's Bradley Beal. We'll see. But they're going to add Presti and Donovan are going to add somebody over the next year or two. But let's just look at the starting lineups. If they let's start in the backcourt, okay? Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I hate these matchups for the Heat. It's just right. Who guards Chris Paul? Who guards Chris Paul? Kendrick Nunn?
Oh my God, yeah. I guess to start the game it would be Kendrick Nunn, but there's just no easy answer there. You would have to. Honestly, you could do some creative things with like Jimmy Butler guarding Chris Paul, maybe. I would probably go with that after a while, just because I don't want Kendrick Nunn to go on to guard Chris Paul primarily. I would try to see if Jimmy.
But how do you do that with Jimmy for most of the – I don't – to me, Jimmy's going to be on him in the last 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, you're right. It would be tough for him to do that all game, but that's the problem.
And initiate offense the entire time? Like, I don't – we'll talk about the matchups the other direction. I think Terrence Ferguson guards Jimmy, but –
I was about to say, I like the Jimmy thing too, because you would take him off Ferguson and you could easily put whichever other guard on him.
Well, Duncan would probably guard Ferguson, right?
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about that. That's one of the matchups where they're not just going to get absolutely roasted.
Ferguson's and none guards Gilgeous Alexander, I guess. I mean, I don't like that either.
I would probably rather have none guard him than Duncan, just to stay in front of him at least a little bit. Speed aspect.
I also wonder if the long layoff will make Spoelstra, again, this is all hypothetical if this happens, but will make Spoelstra more open to tinkering even more. Like there was something to be said for keeping the continuity of that starting lineup together. The Leonard, Bam, Butler, Nunn, Robinson lineup together, like when you were trying to play every day and build for the playoffs, but now you're going to have a 3-month break. Yep. Like I wonder if you just look at and throw it all out and say, okay, they're playing. How are we going to guard Chris Paul? Hey, Andre, you're starting. Or Jay, you're starting. And so we can move some of the matchups around. I don't know. Like, okay, so for instance, let's say, because, I mean, we're going to get to another matchup that's problematic.
Yep.
So go up front. Okay, if you're starting Bam and Leonard, who's guarding Gallinari?
Yeah, that's
Bam?
the thing. I guess I would probably go Bam on Gallo and then just have Myers Leonard staying back, but that's not a great answer either because you're taking Bam out of the paint. You're relying on Myers Leonard to essentially be, your big man down in the paint, which they have done against Embiid in the past. But it's just, and I get it, right? I get why they would do that because Steven Adams is not going to roast you in the paint or anything like that. He's not going to a post up guy who would just dominate Myers Leonard on the block or anything like that. And Bam, honestly, being out on the perimeter isn't a terrible thing either just because of how versatile he is. He can get out there and switch onto other guys. I think he would do a great job guarding. I mean, Gallo would just have nothing for Bam if Bam was guarding him. I'm sorry. He can't get past him. He's not going to really be able to shoot over him. Like,
but then there's the other question. Like couldn't you put Duncan on Gallo and not get killed?
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder if you're going to start. Okay, like Terrence Ferguson is not an offensive player, and we're assuming that they go with the same starters. Wait till Schroeder comes in, then what do you do? Okay, because that's going to become Goran's problem.
Oh, that would be would be really unfortunate for the
or Hero's problem, right? I mean, that's another one. But what do you do with? And again, we don't know how guys are going to come back from the break. Like Spo might take a look at a couple guys in the first 2 days of practice and say, yeah, no. I mean, this guy didn't stay enough in shape. I mean, I don't want to bring up specific guys, I mean, who've been, out with IG models for the past month, but like, you don't know, right? You don't know how guys are going to come back. I mean, I have a pretty good idea how Andre Iguodala is going to come back because he just came back from 8 months and basically started around into shape in 3 weeks, right? But like, I don't know how some of the kids are going to come back with little money in their pocket. It's hard to judge it. You would think they'd come back better, but again, in OKC, you're playing another team that's a really young team, and also there ain't anything to do in Oklahoma City. They're used to it. I just
get scared by that hotel or whatever, right? That's something.
Yeah, the one hotel. Well, Dwayne used to piss people. I pissed people off in OKC too, but Dwayne always used to piss them off. Like during the finals, what do you do in OKC? I watch movies in my room. I tweeted once when I was drunk out on there's only one street to go to there, and I went to the one street, and I was just I don't know what I had, but I whatever. I basically tweeted out. I said, "How OKC can't win a championship because the parade would only be going back and forth on one street." And they didn't like that. But yeah, I mean, they're not a good matchup for a lot of reasons. Like, okay, let's say they keep their standard lineup out there. I almost think you take Myers out of the starting lineup against them and play Bam at the 5 and give yourself a chance to switch everything by starting Jay Crowder at the 4.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Or DJJ, perhaps.
Yeah, I would like Jay or somebody with playoff experience to start over DJJ, and also DJJ just can't be relied on to shoot yet, and Crowder was doing a better job at that. But I would definitely lean more towards the switch everything defense. I just have a lot of trouble seeing it happen, only because I do get that there's a 3-month break. But it doesn't really seem like that's something that Spo was willing to do before the break. And on top of that, it's like that was what was working. That, the set of lineups that they had, and we saw throughout the season how Spo was, he just kept sticking to what was working. I understand playoffs are a different story, game plan, and you throw out the full season game plan that you have. But I just have a feeling that he would just go with the regular starting lineup. There's something telling me that he would just start with Myers, and then they would trust that by the time Myers sits, it wouldn't be that much of a problem.
Maybe, and again, I think, Myers is, from everything I've heard and we've seen, Myers has gotten himself, back from the injury and might be good to go. But I think there's going to be a lot of throwing everything out the window. I think it's going to be, when Spo does that thing where he's like, everything's on the table. That's I feel like that's how it's going to be from the start. I think some of this has to do with, is this a 2 out of 3 series? Is this a 3 out of 5 series? Is this a 4 out of 7 series? If this is a 2 out of 3 series, Goran Dragic is probably going to start because Spo is going to go with the guys he trusts. He's not going to screw around with how's Kendrick Nunn going to come back from this break. Goran Dragic is going to be
his first playoff appearance.
Right. Like his first playoff appearance, go guard Chris Paul after 3 months.
Oh my God.
Okay. Like, with Goran, it's going to be challenging, but at least with Goran, like, you know what you've got, right? You know what he is. Yeah. I think that a lot of this is going to be thrown completely out the window. So let's look at it from the other side. The Heat offensively against them. Chris Paul is not the defender he used to be, but he's still pretty good. How do they match up? I think, like I said, I think Terrence Ferguson guards Jimmy, probably.
I mean, that's a bad matchup for OKC right there with Jimmy, because none of those guys there are really big enough to check him. I mean, right. You could try Gallinari. Gallinari's 100%.
Oh, he'll no. Yeah, no.
But it's like, either way, you're going to have somebody smaller and way skinnier guarding Jimmy if you use any of those 3 guards. Because Ferguson is essentially a guard. I think he's what, like 6'5". He might be under 200 pounds.
Yeah, so. I think this team is so young. I'm looking at the names here that played minutes this year. Darius Bazley, Justin Patton got a little bit of time, not much. God, they're really young. Like, OKC, we talk about the Heat. These 2 teams were probably the most ahead of schedule teams in the NBA.
Yep.
And I mean, you look at Terrence Ferguson. Okay, so yeah, he's 22. He's listed at 6'6", 190. So I mean, he's thin. I mean, he started 123 games the past 3 years. I mean, he was playing right away for them, and he was getting a lot of minutes, and Donovan trusts him. He's not a good offensive player, but the reality
is dunk, and when he's given an open lane and hit open threes, he's gotten good at hitting open threes this year, which was not his strength.
But they've always had a guy like that. Like they had Cephalosha, they had Roberson, right?
Well, to be fair, I think Ferguson is a slightly better shooter, open shot shooter. But yeah, I think you're right. They're very similar in the prototype. The problem is, Cephalosha and Roberson would actually be extremely helpful in this matchup because they could throw one of them on Jimmy. You can't throw Ferguson on Jimmy, or you could try.
Well, what is Roberson? What is Roberson? It's been so long since he played. What is he? Is he even available in any way? Because he's gotten hurt the last couple of years. Let me see, because he would be somebody they would throw at Jimmy.
And that would make easily the most sense. Easily.
And he has some experience, but I'm looking at – let me look at some of the numbers here because he had not played in a long time. And I don't think he's played a minute since – let's take a look. Since the 17-18 season. I don't even know if he's still on – I don't even know if he's still on their roster.
He is. I was actually looking over the roster. He's still there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what his status is. All right, so let's look at the rest of it, though. So if you put Ferguson on Jimmy –
you're going to get a lot of free throw attempts. Jimmy's going to be eating at the line. Jimmy's going to get so many points just going downhill. The thing with, at least with OKC, they can kind of hang their hat on, Ferguson's not going to do a great job guarding Jimmy and not letting him go downhill, but you have Steven Adams back there. So I think that's what OKC will kind of bank on. So maybe Jimmy won't be just scoring at the rim over and over, but he'll be getting to the rim.
But Steven Adams is not a shot blocker. Steven Adams averaged Noel is their best shot blocker at 1.5. Steven Adams averaged 1.1.
But he's their defensive anchor, and he's definitely a great defensive big. He's not a shot blocker, you're right, but he's just one of those guys who eats up a lot of space and grabs all the rebounds, and it's just the way.
No, he's a good player. I'm a big Steven Adams guy, and he's a perfect role guy with Chris Paul in the pick and roll. Like I like Steven Adams, but I'm just
that's the type of guy that gives Bam trouble.
Yes. Well, okay, so let's get to that. All right, so let's assume then that Terrence Ferguson guards Jimmy again. If the lineups are as they look, then Chris Paul guards Kendrick Nunn.
Wait, hold on. How big is that Dort guy?
He's short. He's short. He's 6'3".
Okay.
He's short.
Really
he's actually built a little bit like Nunn, to be honest. So you've got. So they don't really have. Well, Diallo's a little bigger, isn't he? I think Diallo's a little bigger.
But he's
Diallo's 6'5". But so they have a lot of length and athleticism. They don't have a lot of size, honestly. They just.
I'm not even sure about the length.
Yeah, maybe not. Well, Diallo's got a little. I mean, they've got some of their guys do, but I think. But okay, so Gilgeous-Alexander would guard who? Duncan?
Yeah, that's tough. I wouldn't even want if I was them. So I don't know. They would want him chasing around screens, but I don't know that he can guard Kendrick Nunn maybe. But I guess Chris Paul will be guarding Kendrick Nunn. So I think he would be guarding Duncan. I think you're right.
Yeah, and I think Chris Paul would guard Jimmy down the stretch.
Unless he start a crowd or somebody else like that they can throw.
That they could put him on, right? And then Steven Adams guards Bam.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. That's the one matchup they can really be, Bam is obviously the better, more important player in every way. But we've seen it. Every time that they've played each other, Steven Adams is just too damn big for him. That guy is ginormous. And you hear players talk about Steven Adams and just how strong he is.
Well, he's strong and he's active. That's the problem with him. There are a lot of strong guys around the league who don't have his level of activity, but he does not. One of the reasons he doesn't play that many minutes is because he goes full tilt the whole time. And Bam tends to take advantage of guys who don't. And so if you have a guy who's that strong and that active consistently, like even a guy like Embiid, like I've never felt would be that big a problem for Bam because Embiid takes possessions off. Yeah. And so Bam just outworks him. Steven Adams does not take possessions off. Noel also, I think this has to be reframed that he was kind of a busted lottery pick, but in the role that he was in this year in OKC, he was good. Yeah, he needs to be in a limited role. He's a shot blocker. He gives you energy. To me, he's kind of like a better Joel Anthony.
I was gonna say better Birdman. I think they're
similar, right? He plays above the rim. He gives them some vertical spacing. He never developed anything else in his game. But
except Noel is honestly way better defensively than I think Birdman ever was.
Yes,
you guys who block, steals. He's just not an anchor, but he's a good player for sure.
He is. And again, how are guys going to deal with foul trouble in this scenario? How are these games going to be officiated? All this plays into it. All right, but let's get to the overall theme here because we haven't even talked about Hero and Dragic. Schroeder gives the Heat fits. I don't.
Oh man.
I don't know. I don't know how you match up with their three guards. I mean, the Heat would throw three guards out there, but if you're going to put Tyler Hero or Goran Dragic on Schroeder, it's barbecue chicken. I don't, and again,
I think you don't have to worry about Schroeder being a great defender or anything. So,
no,
Hero
he's not.
Definitely be getting some buckets in as well.
He's not. He honestly, I think of all of them, he would be the biggest problem against the Heat. Like as great as Chris Paul is and as great a season as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had, I've always hated the Schroeder matchup against them. And
You're right about Schroeder just always tearing them up. That's 100%. He is one of the Heat killers. But, man, we haven't even talked about it yet. But everything that we kind of talked about all season for what the Heat's defensive woes were and the types of teams that they struggle against, OKC fits the profile, man. Like, they've got the guards and they've got guys who can pull up. All three of their guards are guys who can just pull up and shoot. They're all pretty crafty in their own way. Those are some real threats. And you could even put Gallinari right up there because Gallinari does a lot of his stuff at the top of the perimeter too, which is why I was originally scared just looking at it, matchup to matchup. Like if they were to try
you can't start Myers. You can't start Myers then because you're going to have to start Jay Crowder or DJJ. I mean, that's just the way it's going to have to go. I think it would be Crowder. I agree with you. And I think they'd have to go that direction and bring Iguodala off the bench. And then essentially Olynyk or Myers-Leonard just gets the minutes behind Bam.
You see, it's tough, man. This is why I kind of struggle seeing Spo doing it is because the Steven Adams thing really has me like, is the smartest thing to do is go smaller? Because if Steven Adams is just too big for Bam. And if you get a switch, he's going to easily eat on whoever switches onto him. I don't know if going smaller is the answer just because of that part. I think Spo would want to have another big there that could help with the Steven Adams thing I don't think Spo would have any problem with Bam spending time out on the perimeter. But there's no easy answers, man. This is the type of team that can kill you if you're not careful. But I think
what they remind me of? They are in a short format. If you're not going to play 4 out of 7, this OKC team to me is like an NCAA tournament team. The three guards spread you out. if they get hot, their guards, they're pretty much almost impossible to beat no matter how thin they are.
Yeah, they'll grab a lot of rebounds too.
Because they are thin, right? They get the long rebounds. They are in a short format, and that is why, and we'll close here, that is why the Heat would be better off, in my opinion, if it stays East-West. I think Indiana is a much more conventional matchup than Oklahoma City.
They could afford to put Myers up.
They could afford to play Myers because you're going to play the two bigs. You're going to play Sabonis. You're going to play Miles Turner. And then, you look in the backcourt. Yeah, Oladipo can be great, and he's probably fully recovered by now and got the rust off if he's been working, which I'm sure he has been. But we didn't really see him and Brogdon much together. I feel like, Oladipo would be a problem, but I feel like they would put Jimmy on him and at least make him work. It feels like a more natural matchup. The matchups are cleaner. The matchups in this series are all over the place. Billy Donovan was a tournament coach. I don't like it. I don't like this. I don't like it. And it's a young team. They're bound to the Heat would play. Indiana's a little bit. Indiana's pretty young too, but this is a really young team. I feel like against a lot of teams, the Heat's youth would be an advantage, even though they have added Iguodala, they do have Dragic, they do have Jimmy, but the rest of the team is under 30. I feel like this team, though, neutralizes that youth advantage for the Heat. They've got some springy athletes. I don't like it. To be honest with you, I don't know that I would pick the Heat. I mean, without home court, I just don't like the matchup. I feel the 3-guard thing scares the hell out of me. I would pick the Heat over Indiana pretty easily. I don't like this matchup. I don't like it. I
feel the same. I think it would be really tough because of the whole thing that we talked about. Their point of attack defense has been their weakness. So they try to start Myers. I could easily see them getting to some bad starts in the first quarter that they're just trying to come back from for the rest of the game, because Chris Paul is not just going to throw away the game and let the Heat come back. That's not one of those guys that they could take advantage of and just kind of outwork possession by possession. I think it would be tough to try to play uphill, play an uphill battle after starting off in the first quarter getting cooked in the point of attack. But if they go small, I think it makes it harder for OKC to game plan, because that's the opposite of how the Heat have played all season.
Right.
And I still really like the whole, Jimmy's going to get to the line over and over and over. I think him getting downhill is just going to create so much offense for them, even if he's not scoring. Because other than that, if Jimmy isn't going downhill, the offense kind of bogs down. I think we've noticed.
But remember, Alex, the officials are going to be rusty too. This is going to be a mess in a lot of different ways. And I guess the question is, does Eric want to go conventional because it's what he knows, or just throw everything out and say, we got to win this? And I do think it's different if it's best of 3 versus best of 5. Best of 7, maybe you work into the series a little bit more. Best of 3, Goran Dragic is going to be the point guard of the Heat. I just know it. I can tell you right now that he's not going to screw around with it, take a chance with anything else. He's going to say, this guy's been in. And here's the other reason for that. Goran's been in international competition. He's taken a team. He's won the European Championship with a totally outmatched team. He knows how to play in these kind of condensed situations where you don't know who you're playing next. I just feel like
he's going to give you a crazy effort. He's not going to back down from the other team.
Yeah, Goran will start. Absolutely, Goran will start, and it's no disrespect to the other guys, but it's just. But then if he's going to start, have fun with Chris Paul. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. All right, check out all of our sponsors. Of course, one I didn't mention on this episode, Seltzer Mayberg, onecalllegal.com. You got any kind of legal issue, they're there 24 hours a day. Onecalllegal.com, ONE, calllegal.com, based here in North Miami. If you want to sponsor the show, reach out to us. We're still honoring COVID pricing, even as we kind of come out of COVID. So help us. We'll try to help you out. And check out all the other sponsors in our network. Bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. Also the Lessons Via Leader podcast, louispeters.com, KeystoneChiropractic.com, and all of the others. We'll talk to you soon.
For listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.